Oh, heck, sorry, I got distracted there. Hi, my name's Nick Bowman. I'm an associate professor in journalism and creative media industries at Texas Tech University. And I'm giving this video discussion of my Fulbright experience during the spring 2020 at the National Virginia University in Taipei, the Zhengda. And I was very honored to serve as the Wu Jingjie Arts and Culture Fellow for the Fulbright Taiwan. And although my experience was cut short, I wanted to share a bit of the things I did personally and professionally, and the connections that not only did we forge during my short time in country, but also the connections that are continuing to forge not only now, but into the future. And so, if there's any spoiler alert in my presentation, it's that we're not quite done doing the work yet, even though I had to come home in March due to the global pandemic. And so, as you can see on the screen here, Texas Tech was very supportive of my Fulbright program, and I was largely focused on doing research into augmented and virtual reality and both teaching those courses. I had a teaching and a research core. So two courses taught, and then I conducted and am still conducting some research in Taipei even as I give this presentation. So in terms of my personal growth, I really appreciated the opportunity to get to know my heritage a bit more. My Chinese name is Baonika, and it's a sort of a Chinese version of my American name. But my father actually is from Tainan. He's Taiwanese by birth. And I've always had a complicated history with Taiwan and Taipei, and it was nice to be able to enrich myself as deeply as I could during my short stay of about just under 3 months. And so I blogged a bit about, my first meal and talking about what it was like going through the markets. This part really touched a nerve with me, and getting to be, in the Dihua street and really understand the people living around me. My local market was the Muza market in Taipei, and it was quite special. Something I talked quite a bit about that surprised me was this discussion of immigration, and I really had this profound experience when I was going to get my alien resident card that while the hall was crowded and while it was panicked, there was a sense of calm and dignity that came with the Taiwanese immigration officials. And it's something that as I think and reflect on how the United States and how we're engaging immigrants and visitors to our country lately, it's really had me thinking a bit about these cultural comparisons and these national comparisons. And so I wrote about a lot of these personal experiences in the blog, and I would invite you to go through. As you'll see on the screen here, there's a little over 3 pages worth of material I was posting really up until I left the country in March, and even a few posts afterwards. I even had one on the trash trucks and the music that they played, the Maiden's Prayer, which was what played over in Muza, where I was living. Of course, Fulbright isn't just about personal growth, although I would love to talk more about how I've grown as an individual and as a scholar. But our work that we did in country had meaningful impact. So as an instructor at Zhengda, I was grateful that I was able to teach my classes remotely up until the end of the semester. In fact, we only ended our classes a few weeks ago. And we did a lot of this work through a combination of Microsoft OneDrive and Microsoft Teams and Cisco WebEx and leveraging some technologies to make sure that I could speak with my students live twice a week for my 2 different courses. Many of my graduate courses, because I was teaching in the graduate program at Zhengda, took the form of readings and reflections, and so the students had the opportunity to sort of engage with some of the thought leadership in either media entertainment or the psychology of interactive media. And their task was to read those leading manuscripts ahead of time, come to class with questions, we debate and discuss with each other via live stream, and then they would go back to their rooms and pontificate a bit more and eventually generate research ideas. And so I really wanted them to understand the connection between scholarship and research and practice. So their research ideas were meant to be something that could be done to demonstrate empirically an effect from media psychology or interactive media that could be relevant for the world around them. These projects took the form of final research proposals, so we didn't collect any data for any number of reasons, but we kept it to the conceptual. But that also included a presentation or a suggestion of a research project. And here's just a collection of some of the posters students generated. So I had them not only write a short manuscript of about 4,000 words, but also draft a research poster that they could present at a conference. Our original plan was to have like a Fulbright conference at Zhengda that was open to the public, but that got scrapped pretty quickly due to the growing fears of the coronavirus. But, everything from why do people play World of Warcraft as a way to satisfy their psychological needs? We have posters that are focused on all sorts of different topics in here. Unfortunately, the page isn't loading right now, but you'll see, here's something about Marvel characters and how they can influence our body satisfaction. And this is one of our students, Yvonne Sheng, who is also working in the Fulbright office, who talked a bit about how these superheroes can affect the way we feel about our own bodies, and the effects might not always be negative. And so you can see a bit of the discussion turn that these presentations and projects were taking. One of the goals of the courses not only was to get students thinking about research and maybe understanding the research process a little better, improving their science literacy, but I'm hoping that a few of these students will go on and conduct some of the research. And so I'm looking forward to staying in touch. I've already had meetings with several students about either doing projects for a thesis or doing them for a dissertation, or maybe just doing internships, and in some cases, maybe even coming to Texas to do some of the work here and continuing the academic exchange. And so I'm really appreciating that. Of course, in addition to the students engaging with research through my courses, I also engaged my own research. And I put together kind of a crude picture here, but one of my big tasks was taking my existing research on interactivity as demand. And that is a model that's trying to understand people's perceptions of the cognitive, emotional, and social and physical demands of interactive technology. When I put this headset on, I've got to think through it. I'm going to have emotional reactions. I've got to physically do things to make the screen function and move. And I have to cope with the social actors in that space. And one of the arguments from my research is that as those things increase, there's a bit of a balancing act where we have to figure out which demands are more critical for our tasks than other demands. And we try to work through that quite a bit in our research practices. Well, you can't do that if you don't have a scale to measure people's perceptions. I won't go into great detail on the screen here, but what we see on the far left are the pattern of responses for Taiwanese respondents. This was about 1,000 people responded to a translated Mandarin Chinese version of our research. And you see these 5 kind of clean clusters breaking down. In the middle is the same pattern of results for German participants when we translated the scale to German. And you see these 5 clusters of cognitive, emotional, social, physical, and then controllers. And this is the original US data with an English language scale. What I'm showing here, and what I'm currently in the process of writing up with my colleagues at Zhengda, is this manuscript, and showing that we were able to accomplish a translation of a concept that actually held in another cultural context. Why is that important? US, Germany, Taiwan, all big tech users. And now we've got a metric that doesn't have, that is calibrated to work in all 3 languages, and we presume all 3 cultures. And so we can really do some meaningful cross-cultural research. We're already following up on this study right now. These are the early data. I haven't even finished the analysis yet, but the results are really promising. Down below are these things called scree plots. They're hard to see on this screen, but the point is they break off at about 5, and they all follow the same pattern. It's very rare to get a translation, back translation of a metric that was developed originally in English that's holding up in these different cultural and linguistic contexts. So we're pretty excited that VR users and gaming users, at least in these 3 cultures, are processing the content in the same way. That's going to allow us to unlock the potential for our studies down the road. One of those studies is using the game Beat Saber to try to understand how people make sense of an environment where you're spinning your arm and you're rushing and you're learning all these new moves. Imagine this game, but happening in 360 degrees. That's actually an empirical study we're planning right now. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we couldn't do the study this spring, but we're going to continue working on that. Finally, I had the great pleasure of speaking with the Taiwanese Institute for Governance and Communication Research. I talked about open science and translational practices there and how we can make research accessible to the world. And I'm working with the Taiwan Communication Survey that's going out nationwide. to a representative sample of Taiwanese citizens. And my process of that survey is going to be looking at the media use and gaming usage statistics among Taiwanese nationals. And we're going to compare that data immediately back to the United States. And we're going to do the exact same study on a representative sample of U.S. respondents. And as part of my Arts and Culture Fellow, I'm still working, and I promised Charlie I'd have this done, on some 3D sculptures that would represent my experience of Taiwan during my trip. Right now, the best I have is a 3D sculpture of my name with the Taiwanese sun emblazoned in the back. I'm not ready to reveal the sculpture I'm going to be developing for the office at Fulbright, Taiwan, but rest assured I am working on it. And I'm sorry for the delays there and the headlines. Texas has been a dangerous place to live right now. All this being said, I'm incredibly grateful to the office and to all of you who helped facilitate this cultural exchange. And I hope you're as proud of the work that I'm doing and I'm continuing to do as I am grateful for the opportunity to be involved. Thank you very much.